When a murder investigation stalls, sometimes the only hope is that a new tip will come in.
As is the case in the murder of a 39-year-old Reading man, tonight his family makes a plea.
WFMZ's Karen Millett has more on the murder of Brian Frymoyer in this Crime Alert cold case file.
Why? Why did you take Ken's life? You can't take somebody else's life and not feel something.
For almost 3 years, Irene Frymoyer has been waiting for an arrest in her son's murder. Brian Frymoyer grew up in Reading, loved going to the races and rooting for the Reading Royals.
Brian was a tricky kid when he grew up. He got in a lot of trouble. Not trouble, but I mean mischiefy.
During the day, he helped his mother care for his ailing grandmother, and at nights, Brian worked as a janitor at 10th and Green Elementary.
I'm sure he wasn't expecting to be confronted with trouble that night. It was an ordinary night for him. He was on his way home from work.
That ordinary walk may have been part of his demise. Irene says months earlier, Brian had told her he thought he was being followed. She suggested he walk another way home, and he had for weeks. But that night, about 10 o'clock on January 20th, 2006, Brian took his usual route home.
It was a side street, no homes in the area. It was a spot where the suspect knew the potential for witnesses being around was slim to none.
Police believe one, possibly two men tried to rob Brian. Witnesses heard 2 gunshots and voices and saw someone running south on Moss Street. When police arrived, Brian was lying on the sidewalk near the intersection of Marion and Moss Streets, shot once in each leg. He would die a few hours later.
It's hard to move on because the holidays come, he's not here. The kids at school missed him. 10th and Green, they say, is still not right.
Brian died just 3 blocks from his home. It's a place that years later, his family still gathers on the anniversary of his death.
Dave was a good guy. He'd do anything for you. And if he was here today, he'd say the same thing. Let's go, we're going to races, we're going hockey. Nice guy.
Police say they have few leads in this case. If you have any information, you're asked to call Crime Alert Berks County at 877-373-9913. If your tip leads to an arrest, you could be eligible for a cash reward. Now tonight's Crime Alert cold case file. WFMZ's Karen Millett has the latest on the murder of William Rock.
Hunting season in Berks County, rising before dawn to seek out an unknowing prey.
It wasn't unusual for people to be, going to or from their home carrying a rifle because it was hunting season.
Perhaps it's why no one thought it unusual in Reading when someone with a rifle was standing by the railroad tracks. December 2nd, 1977, the night 35-year-old William Rock would become the hunted. Born and raised in the city, William J. Rock was married and had a son. He was a hard worker with a troubled past.
Through the investigation and speaking with some of his friends and family members, we learned that he did associate with some known criminals.
In 1969, William and a dozen other men were arrested and charged in connection with more than 30 burglaries. He was convicted by a jury, but an appeals court overturned the verdict, ruling the star witness wasn't credible. 6 years later, William got a job at a local beer distributor. He was a clerk at Vaqueros on North 9th and Perry Streets.
It was a sniper attack. The suspect was over half of a football field away from the victim and assassinated him.
9:20 p.m., December 2nd, 1977. William and his boss were locking up for the night.
The boss told him he would see him in the morning. They went their separate ways. And as the victim was walking to his pickup truck, 3 shots rang out.
The shooter, a sniper maybe 50 to 60 yards away, had been waiting. William was hit twice in the abdomen and chest. He fell to the ground.
They were waiting for him to come to that vehicle, so they knew they had the right person.
30 years later, the murder of William Rock is still unsolved. This is where he was gunned down. There were no eyewitnesses, but plenty of rumor as to what happened and why. Through the investigation, police say they uncovered a possible link with organized crime. The FBI was called in.
There were 3 casings found. They were all from the same gun.
A .30-06 rifle, but no murder weapon was ever found. The trace of a killer lost just a few steps from the casings. Investigators want to see justice and the final chapter closed in the murder of William Rock.
They can still be solved. If Mr. Rock was alive today, he'd be considered a senior citizen. He'd be 65 years old.
If you have any information that could help solve this case, call Crime Alert 877-373-9913. And remember, if your tip leads to an arrest, you could receive a reward of up to $10,000. For nearly 4 years now, Reading police have been investigating the murder of 2 women in the city. They were gunned down in an after-hours club.
No one has ever been arrested for the crime, and with the anniversary approaching, police are hoping for a few more tips to put the case to rest.
WFMZ's Karen Millette has tonight's Crime Alert cold case file.
What do you wish for when it's time to blow out the candles? Good health, good fortune, a long life? They are wishes Judith Barrero would never get to make. On Sunday, April 3rd, 2005, Judith would have turned 31. That Friday night, she went out with friends to celebrate. They stayed out late, and after the bars and clubs closed, they found an after-hours party at this row home in Reading.
It was crowded. People were basically elbow to elbow in there.
30, maybe 40 people crammed inside this first-floor apartment on North 9th Street. Drinking, dancing, with the shades drawn. Police say it was a bottle club, a speakeasy, that the man who lived here was illegally selling beer and charging a cover to get in. Judith was in the back of the house, in the kitchen, standing next to 28-year-old Bethsaida Rios. Friends called her Betsy.
We received information that there were some minor verbal arguments that had occurred there that night, which isn't different from any other night at a place like that.
But what happened next would bring the party to an abrupt end. 5 women were shot. Their bodies dropped to the floor. 2 of them, Judith and Bethsaida, would die right there in the kitchen.
3 other women were brought here to Reading Hospital. They recovered, but the memories of that night linger. And now, nearly 4 years later, there seems to be more questions than answers. Police say they have no motive for the murders, but they do know that the shooter, who was outside, simply placed his handgun up near the back window and started shooting.
It was just total disregard for human life.
Witnesses say they heard 5 to 7 gunshots. Investigators say the killer must have come up a dark alley to the back of the house, preying on the unsuspecting victims.
It's a scene that, you know, it stays with you because of the senselessness of it. 2 ladies lost their lives that night.
Again, if you know anything about the murders of Judith and Betsy, you can call Crime Alert Berks County. The toll-free number is 877-373-9913. If your anonymous tip leads to an arrest, you could get a cash reward of up to $10,000. Tonight, his family makes a plea.
WFMZ's Karen Millette has more on the murder of Brian Freimoyer in this Crime Alert cold case file.
Why? Why did you take Ken's life? You can't take somebody else's life and not feel something.